Hello dear students, welcome back to another video presentation. So today in this video we'll be discussing about another important aspect of social marketing, which is about upstream, midstream and downstream factors. So let us look at what these factors are about. Okay, since we're talking about social marketing, let us understand what is social marketers' role in influencing the upstream and downstream factors, right? We'll eventually try to understand what does this upstream and downstream factors mean, but let us try to understand the concept as a whole. So the main focus of social marketing since its origin, that is since 1970s, has been the individual behavior change. Social marketing or the social marketers has always tried to change the individual behavior, or let's say undesirable or undesired behavior of individual or people, right? So according to many observers and practitioners, social marketing is a downstream approach to influencing people with bad behaviors, right? Social marketing is generally or has been generally regarded as a downstream approach. Now, downstream approach, in other words, you can mean it as an approach to deal with the bad behaviors, or let's say the problem behaviors. Let us say, for example, behavior of smoking or neglecting prenatal care, not recycling, right? Abuse, harassment, not, etc. Okay. So many more target audiences need to be addressed still, besides the problem people only, right? Now, that is so if we are to solve the major social problems, right? So it is said that if we are to solve the major social problems, right, and if we are to solve them from the uh, solve them for good, then we must try to address the root cause. And this was suggested by Alan R. Andreasen, Georgetown University, in the social marketing in the 21st century, right? Now, according to many social marketing experts, social marketing should broaden its scope beyond just individuals or group of customers and attempts to influence those who help shape the determinants of human behavior, such as policymakers, regulators, managers, educators, and the media as well. So I hope you're getting to understand it. So here we're seeing two things, right? Upstream and downstream. Now, like I've seen in the beginning, downstream factors are those that deals with or that refers to the problem behavior, right? The bad behaviors, the undesirable behaviors, which the social marketers is trying to change, right? Or which the social marketers are trying to bring a change into, right? Okay. Whereas in the later part, you have seen that we must also try to address people or influence people around those uh, people practicing the bad behaviors, right? So who are these people, or what are these factors? It has been mentioned here some examples such as policymakers, regulators, managers, educators. Now these are the factors, or let's say the people or the party, right, who can influence those bad behavior to change it into a good behavior, right? So these are the influencers, which are basically known as the upstream factors. Now the social marketing experts and many researchers suggest that the scope of social marketing should be broadened, right? It should evolve from just focusing into individuals and shift its focus on the upstream factors as well, if it wants to solve major social problems, right? Because some of the problems cannot only be changed by those downstream factors alone, right? Even if they want to, because some things or some situations are out of our control, are not in our own hands, correct? So we need the help of the policymakers, the regulators, educators, right? Who can shape our behavior, mold our behavior from the very uh, the roots. Okay. Okay, moving on, let us talk about the downstream analogy, which was originally adapted from a story told by Irving Zola, cited in McKinley John B. Right? Now, what is this downstream dangerous stream analogy? Right? So the downstream term, it came from this analogy called dangerous stream. Now, again, this analogy, dangerous stream, came from or was derived from a story, basically, right? Now, this was titled as a case for refocusing upstream, the political economy of illness. Now, let us try to understand this analogy with the help of a very short story, right? Now, it says here that the analogy is that a person witnessing a fast flowing dangerous stream with lots of people in it, with many of the people drowning, right? So what happened is uh, once a person witnessed uh, a group of people who were drowning in a downstream river, right? It was a dangerous stream with strong currents which was flowing downside, that is downstream, right? And he witnessed a few people getting drowned. Now, what he did was he deployed he contacted concerned authorities, and a few public servants were deployed to dive in and rescue people, right, or haul them to the bank of the stream and revive them, right? So this was the strategy, or this was the rescue operation taken to save or to rescue those people who were drowning in that river, right? Now, what was seen is that even if they were rescue people, or even if they were public servants who were continuously pulling out people and rescuing them, uh, after some time the people could still see another group of people or even more people drowning again and again. So this kept on continuing, right? So the punchline of the analogy is that it would be better, or it would have been better, to focus upstream to see what was causing all the people to end up in the water in the first place, right? And to do something about it, such as build a fence. I hope you understood. So the thing is, instead of focusing on the downstream, that is on the problem area, that is, instead of focusing on the people who kept on drowning, right? Instead of deploying people, or deploying the rescuers to, bring out people from the dangerous stream, right? It would have been probably better if the focus was shifted to the upstream. That is, maybe to focus on the root cause, right? That is why were people actually getting drowned in the first place. If the focus would have been shifted to that, then probably the problem would have been solved much earlier and much easier, right? So sometimes there is a need to focus on the upstream to see or to solve some root problem, right? Okay, so this is the story, a very brief story, that from which the dangerous stream analogy came, and ultimately the downstream factor was derived, right? So now we understand the downstream approach, or the downstream factors, which basically refers to the problem people or the problem behavior, the bad behavior, right? Which basically the social marketers have been trying to solve or address or change. But now the social marketers suggest that there is also a need to shift our focus to the upstream factors, that is probably the policymakers and all, right, or the higher authorities. In this case, that is in this story, probably building a fence up in the somewhere in the upstream, that is from where people can maybe try to dive into the water and swim, right? There, if probably a fence was built, the problem would have been solved, right? So this is the message of the story, correct? Okay. Now, this analogy is often used in appeals to use a more strategic approach to social program development and delivery, especially emphasizing the need of preventive action focused on the determinants of social problems or the risk conditions that cause many social ills, right? So this is what I've just explained it to you. However, the exact nature of what constitutes upstream, downstream, or in-stream activity is not well articulated. So there are limitations, of course. Sometimes the exact nature or the characteristics of the factors influencing or the relevant factors or associated factors constituting the upstream or influencing the upstream, downstream, or midstream activities are not very well determined or defined. So this is when the problem might come. So let us see certain definitions that seeks to set out some clarity with regard to what action at each level might consist of. Now, coming to the upstream factors, right? We have already discussed, or we have already had an overview of what are these upstream factors. This comprises of policy formulation and prioritization, budget allocation, and influence on strategy. So we're talking or we're focusing on the strategy here, right? This could be about forming or formulating a policy in order to achieve a goal or solve a problem, right? And prioritization, budget allocation, this all are under the policy formulation, or let's say this all happens in the upstream level, right? Or strategy as a whole, right? Just like a strategy is developed by the upper management, or let's say the executive bodies in an organization. Similarly, the upstream factors comprises of the, let's say, the upper management, right? Okay. Now, these factors are focused on the causal agents and determinants of social problems, right? Now, interventions of upstream factors will include, for example, a policy to restrict the sale or promotion of dangerous products, or to promote through fiscal incentives green travel, etc. Right? Now, if you might recall, few years back we have seen, the government imposing a ban on, let's say, plastic bags used in the market, or let's say restrictions in the sale of tobacco products, right? Although it could not last very long, but there was this attempt to address this behavior, this certain ill behaviors in society, right? So these are certain actions or preventive measures taken by the upstream segment, right? The policymakers. So according to social marketers, engaging upstream is as important as downstream intervention, right? So upstream social marketing proposes that influencing policymakers, regulators, managers, educators can help address societal problems, and that these groups can be sorry, these groups can be treated as target audiences similar to conventional interventions. So social marketers today have also started treating the upstream factors as the target audiences, right? Sometimes the government has to be, the policymakers, the educators have to be targeted, right? The managers, the regulators have to be targeted in order to address a particular problem, because certain things are in their hands which the normal people or which the downstream people uh, wouldn't really be able to solve, right? So upstream factors has become as important as the downstream factors. Moving on, it is also said that it is unfair to expect your audience to change their behaviors easily, because actions they take are determined by many factors, both internal and external. Now, very rightly say that you cannot expect your audience as a social marketer, if you're trying to address particular behavior, right? Ill behavior, undesirable behavior. So sometimes you cannot just expect them to change the behavior overnight, or let's say, even if they want to, because there are many factors associated with it, both internal and external. Sometimes there are factors or there are reasons which which your audience can't even control, right? Some factors may be, or some actions or practices may be habitual, which are sometimes very hard to stop. But sometimes, even if motivated, the barriers are difficult to overcome, because some barriers are even beyond the audience, beyond the control of the audience that you are trying to influence and control. So this upstream social marketing addresses how we change the policies, laws, regulations, and physical environment that can marginalize or render worthless our best efforts as social marketers at getting individuals to change their behavior if there are too many environmental barriers, right? Okay. Now, different from downstream social marketing, which we know basically as focusing on producing individual behavior change, right? Upstream social marketing program is designed to change the macro environment surrounding people's lives. So this is the one of the basic differences we can see between downstream and upstream. Downstream, as we know, it focuses on changing the individual behavior, or a behavior of a group of uh, audience or people. Whereas upstream social marketing program, it is focused to change the macro environment, which basically surrounds people's life, or lives of those with the undesirable behavior, right? So the premise is that marketing concepts and techniques alongside other tools can be used to influence the behavior of decision makers and opinion formers, for example, to induce policy change, right? The goal of the marketers is to influence the policymakers. Okay. Furthermore, it also influences the environment in which individual behaviors operate. So this is why it becomes so important. For example, upstream social marketing has been influential in changing the environment in relation to smoking, including bans on tobacco marketing, like I said, and introduction of smoke-free legislation, right? So as we can see, only because of certain laws, certain restrictions or regulations in the country or in the region, uh, which is basically meant for peace and stability and whatnot, there is some sort of what can you say, there's a process, a formal or a stability going on in a society, right? Okay. Now let us look at an example here. So Health Canada, it ran a campaign on secondhand smoke in the workplace, right? The Health Canada had been delivering messages on the harms of tobacco use and secondhand smoke for many years. But the header campaign was aimed at a different target. So there was this Health Canada program which basically had been delivering messages on the ill effects of tobacco and even secondhand smoke. But this new campaign called Header, it targeted a different audience. This campaign featured Heather Crow, a real Canadian who had been a waitress for 40 years. Now, Heather never smoked, right? So it was based upon this person called Heather. So Heather never smoked but worked in a smoke-filled restaurant. And in the campaign materials, she explained that she was dying from lung cancer due to secondhand smoke, right? So this was the effect of secondhand smoke, since the main products of Health Canada was secondhand smoke and direct smoke as well, smoke out of tobacco and all the effects of tobacco. All right. So Heather became a well-known spokesperson on secondhand smoke and toured the country speaking about secondhand smoke in the workplace. Now, this campaign and the work Heather has done personally uh, in communities across Canada and had received a major or had a major impact on provinces and cities invoking bans on smoking in workplaces, restaurants, and bars. Right? So this campaign was very successful because it had tried to target in a different way, right? It strategized in a different way because this was from coming from a person who suffered from lung cancer, right? Because of constantly or working as a waitress in a smoke-filled environment for a long period of time. So the audience, they kind of connected to it. Okay. Now talking about the midstream factors, we have seen about upstream factors. We have also understood what are downstream factors. Now, what are these midstream factors, right? There is up, down, and there has to be a midstream, or in other words, also can be termed as in-stream factors. Now, the strategy implementation focused on helping people cope with, and improve their ability to deal with poor social conditions and immediate threats uh, to them and their family or community well-being. Right now, what does this midstream factors they intervene? Uh, it, these are basically the people or the factors, surrounding those people being affected with the bad behavior or an undesirable behavior, right? Which are supposed to be changed. Now let us see some of the examples of the midstream interventions that can be done. Now, examples would include community resilience and social capital building support programs, training in skills development, practical assistance in the form of subsidies, and incentives to help adoption of positive social action, such as conditional cash payments for taking girls to school in developing world countries, right? So this can be certain strategic actions, right? Certain policies that has been formulated in order to help the downstream people, right? Or the affected people. It or mixed in other cases, it can also refer to those people such as the peers, family members, relatives, right? Who have a direct or indirect influence on the downstream people or the downstream factors, right? Okay. So now we understand even midstream factors are quite important. Now coming to the downstream factors once again, right? Downstream factors, as we know by now, these are focused on deploying tactical interventions, projects, and campaigns and aimed at influencing specific behaviors which are related to social challenges such as smoking, overeating, poor energy use, unhygienic conditions, or let's say deforestation, pollution, harassment, child abuse, etc. Right? There are countless such social issues or challenges to think of. Right? Now, these are what downstream factors directly refer to. Right? And we can see some of the examples of interventions in it or as a downstream factor. These can be informational programs, design solutions such as traffic calming, and service provision such as smoking cessation clinics, etc. Now, we have already discussed about uh, the social marketing, uh, you know, goals or the objective of social marketing, what it is about, right? It is basically focused on the downstream factors, right? That is changing the behavior of individuals, right? Who have been practiced or who have been indulged in some uh, undesirable behavior, right? So these are the downstream factors, the downstream people whose behavior needs to be changed. Um, whose behavior the social marketers are trying to address, right? Okay. And we have also seen the upstream and midstream factors who nowadays we cannot ignore, right? So just focusing on the downstream factors or the problem behavior alone by the social marketers is no point, right? Unless we focus or unless we also uh, target and influence the upstream factors, that is the policymakers, lawmakers, the educators, managers, right, who has some sort of authority, right, over the society, over the people, and as well as the midstream factors, that is certain strategies, certain actions, the peers, family members, who also has a kind of influence in the downstream factors or the problem behavior or individuals having those problem behaviors. The entire the message, the entire cause wouldn't be successful, right? So social marketers are trying to address these problems nowadays. Now, let us try to conclude by understanding that the role of social marketing is the development of effective and efficient programs at each level, right? It can be through the setting of clear behavioral goals, number one, right? Because that is the prime objectives of social marketing, along with competition analysis, the development of valued social exchanges, the development of segmented interventions, right? We also need to understand that you know there are people uh, with different characteristics, like each individual that differ in their characteristics in their nature, and they behave differently at different settings, right? So there is a need to segment our audiences, to segment the population and target them and focus on them specifically, right? And also the selection of optimum and efficient and effective, uh, I mean the selection of the optimum and efficient and effective programs that can be evaluated in terms of their impact on the specific behaviors, right? Now this should happen at the upstream level. Examples I've already mentioned. There can be also corporations behaviors related to promotions. Also at the in-stream level or the midstream level, such as the citizen uptake of support services, right? And also at the downstream level, for example, changes in fruit and vegetable consumption, etc. So there are a lot of examples that we can think of. I hope you can also think of some practical examples and relate with it. Uh, and lastly, let us try to understand what social marketers should do about it, right? Now, as it is very clear that first of all, identifying or setting behavioral goals, right? What needs to be changed and for, for whom it needs to be changed, how it needs to be done. These are the goals of social marketers. But besides that, we also must focus on the factors or the levels that we know that we must influence. That is the upstream, midstream, and the downstream. None of these factors can be ignored. None of these levels can be ignored. Now, we must engage in research as social marketers. Now, this is very important. We should be talking about marketing research and research plans in the coming video. So it says that as social marketers, our role, our duty, right, or our effort should be in engaging in as much research as possible, right? Because only then we'll be knowing the depth and uh, detail of the problem, the cause, and how to tackle it. And also developing and testing of the theories. There are theories available. We have already seen theories about behavioral change and concepts and ideas in this area, and also disseminate the findings, right? Sometimes uh, some theories may also turn out to be different, right? The results, the interpretations of certain theories can turn out to be different in your experiment or in your study, right? So this should be constantly studied and analyzed and applied, right, in your field of study, in your uh, problem areas, right? So this will help the social marketing operate very effectively in all the levels, that is downstream, midstream, and upstream, right? So I hope it is clear the concept of upstream, midstream, and downstream factors, which are very essential for the social marketers to understand, or as marketers in general to understand. So that was all for today. I hope you had a an enlightening session. So see you in the next video. Take care. Thank you.